After my brother's funeral, his wife withdrew his money. My family burst out laughing. Lydia's husband, Lawrence, had emptied their joint account. Help yourself, she thought, and be thankful for what little is left. Though unspoken, her brother, Philip, and their mother shared the same sentiment. He was right about everything, Philip had said, and the whole family erupted in laughter when Lydia fell into their trap. Lydia, the middle child, had lost her brother Lawrence the previous year. He had passed away peacefully in his sleep one early morning after 6 months in the hospital. He was only 35. Lydia and her younger brother, Philip, were unmarried while Lawrence had been married. Lydia hadn't liked Lawrence's girlfriend, Elaine, from the moment they met. "Nice to meet you, Elaine," she had said, grinning and looking adorable as she sat next to Lawrence in the living room where the family had gathered. Elaine worked in the clothing industry and was 5 years older than Lawrence. They had been introduced by mutual friends. Lawrence's captivated expression had seemed a bit excessive to Lydia, but she chalked it up to it being his first girlfriend. "Is this house a rental?" Elaine had asked, looking at Lawrence. Lydia, still laughing at Lawrence, thought she had misheard. Did she just ask if this is a rental house, she wondered. Mom chuckled and said, "Our late dad built this house." Lydia, still pondering the question, replied, "Not rented but owned." "Why are you asking?" I had not misheard, she thought, and an inexplicable sense of unease began to creep over her. "That's excellent," Elaine continued. "I was aware of your father's passing, but you're a single mother, correct? I wanted to know if you were in need." Lydia felt a surge of anger. While it's true that single mothers sometimes give the impression of having financial difficulties, she thought, Mom's hard work, plus the sizable bequest Dad left behind, prevented our family from experiencing financial hardship. Dad had died from a disease in his 40s, leaving behind Mom and their school-aged children. Philip, who was in 6th grade, Lydia in 8th, and Philip then revealed the suspicion. "Elaine has been coming over to our place a lot lately. She chats with Mom most of the time. She arrives by herself, eats the supper that Mom prepared, packs Lawrence's share into a container, and departs." "Is it really true?" Lydia asked. "I heard her chatting to Mom in the living room the other day after I got out of the shower. If I move out, it will be lonely for you to live here by yourself," she said. "What if we live here? Perhaps she's after this house." Lydia was in disbelief at what was happening. The last time she had talked to Mom on the phone, she made no mention of Elaine. Perhaps she wanted to spare me the trouble, she thought. I have a nasty feeling about this. Lydia hung up and called Lawrence immediately. "I wanted to talk to you about something," she said. "Can you meet?" Lawrence seemed to have some issues of his own and agreed to meet immediately. When Lydia said she wanted to chat about Elaine, he agreed. She went to the pub Lawrence had suggested after work. He was already sipping on a drink. It appeared that Lawrence, whom she hadn't seen since Christmas, had shed some pounds. Their previous meeting had been about 6 months ago. "Lawrence, are things okay with Elaine?" Lydia asked him directly as she sat down and placed her beer order. "Do you two communicate? She's reportedly been home quite a bit. Are you aware of that?" With a sardonic smirk, Lawrence continued, "You know too much, Lydia. I know she's gone to Mom a lot, but she doesn't talk about these trips when she's here." "How do you know?" Lydia asked. "There are dishes from Mom's cooking on the dinner table unless she's taking lessons or carrying food from Mom's. You can't get that flavor right." "That makes sense," Lawrence remarked, acknowledging Mom's cooking's flavor. "Why don't you discuss it with Elaine? If you went to your spouse's relatives, you would normally discuss it, right?" "She's never mentioned it to me," he said, lost in thought. "Elaine has offered to move in way, Mom. Do you know that?" Lawrence looked thoughtful and remarked, "I didn't know that." Then he abruptly stated, "She spends money like water." "Spends money like water?" Lydia repeated. Based on her looks, Elaine obviously spends a lot of money on clothing. "She barely comes to see me twice a year, but when she does, her clothing bags, shoes, and accessories are always high-end brands. I didn't believe they could afford such luxury because, as far as I know, Lawrence is an average salaryman and Elaine is a housewife. Given that they are childless, I figured they were saving money somewhere else." Lawrence admitted, "I'm thinking about divorcing her. She obtained $50,000 in loans from different credit bureaus and consumer finance organizations, using my name without notifying me. When collection letters began showing up at the house, that's when I discovered it. But that's not all. She's also been taking money out of our savings. Our balance is nil. It's absurd. With sorrowful eyes, Lawrence chuckled. But Lydia didn't find it amusing at all. Elaine is, in fact, irrational and unreliable, she thought. My first assessment was accurate. Perhaps I ought to have objected to their marriage with greater vigor. She was speechless when she saw Lawrence in such anguish. Lawrence said Elaine most likely wanted to move in with Mom in order to save money on rent. So over this period, nobody else visited Ed but them. The only families permitted to visit the hospital were Elaine's and theirs. Despite all this, the divorce never materialized, and it appeared like Lawrence would die before it was settled. Lydia had at first firmly advised that Lawrence get a divorce from her, but she changed her mind after hearing his opinions. Lawrence died 6 months after being admitted to the hospital. They returned his body to their family's house. After all this time, Lawrence must have been relieved to get home. Elaine appeared as they were talking with the funeral director about the preparations. Presumably, Mom had gotten in touch with her. Get out. Lydia was about to yell, but Lawrence and Elaine were still legally wed. She couldn't dispute with her answer that she had the right to bid him farewell. The funeral director then arranged for them and Lawrence to go to the funeral home. There they informed Lawrence's friends, co-workers, and acquaintances about the wake and funeral. They were too busy getting ready for the funeral to have time for mourning, but it took their minds off Lawrence's loss. Despite the unbearable grief of losing her child and her beloved husband to the same cancer, Mom managed to remain calm and organized all the way through. Philip and Lydia would frequently cry uncontrollably out of sheer anguish, which worried everyone around them. Elaine reappeared after the burial. She had skipped the wake and the burial, even though she insisted she had a right to see him off. In fact, they were relieved that she wasn't there. Her flamboyant branded clothing was unfit for a place of grief. How on earth was she here? Elaine came up to them and asked if they had done any fundraising or received any funding, as well as how much money was raised. Lydia was immediately incensed by her question, since she had come to steal the funds that were being raised for Lawrence's burial. Are you coming to get gifts now? Go and don't ever show up here again, Lydia shouted. What are you talking about? Elaine shot back. I, his wife, and the rightful owner of the money that was raised for his funeral. Quickly turn them over. You cannot get money. Leave now. With tangible anger, Philip and Lydia yelled, You didn't pay Lawrence a visit in the hospital at all. What type of spouse are you? Elaine grinned and said, But we're not divorced, so I'm obviously his wife. Then Mom gently told Elaine, there were no cash contributions or grants. All of the money was used to cover the funeral costs. In actuality, we're short by around $500,000. Will you be covering it as his wife? You have to pay for that. I understand that Dad has an inheritance besides his finances. They were not very strong. There was barely $2,000 in his bank account. Elaine answered. Then she took Lawrence's bank card out of her branded purse. Among the things they should have taken back from the hospice to prepare for the funeral was that card. Was it taken by her without authorization? Lydia went to the bank and took out all of the cash, not coins but bills, from the ATM. She slammed Lawrence's bank card and a paper statement onto the table and screamed, Here, take the change. Upon closer examination, Lydia saw that just a little amount of money remained after $2,000 had been taken out. Sadness and frustration filled her. Tears spilled out. Leave, simply leave, Mom subsequently told Elaine. It was improper of you to withdraw it without authorization. What's wrong with you? I'm his wife, Elaine protested. I am entitled to receive his estate. Well, since I'm his mother, I'm also entitled to inherit, Mom said. There was just $2,000 in the account. That's his whole estate, which is yours to own. We want no more contact with you. In exchange, deal, Lydia stated. Then she pushed Elaine out the door, grabbed her arm, and dragged her to it. Philip and Lydia just stared at one another for a long time before they started laughing. In fact, they had purposefully placed the banking card among Lawrence's possessions because they knew Elaine might try to take it. All of this was a part of Lawrence's scheme. Once in the hospital, Lawrence had taken advantage of the opportunity to quietly organize his affairs. He gave Lydia and Philip his portion of Dad's money and moved the insurance beneficiary to Mom. These were precautions to make sure Elaine didn't get anything. When Lawrence realized he didn't have much time left, he came up with a scheme to force Elaine to pay off the debts she had accrued instead of divorcing her. Elaine was a housewife with little credit, so she was unable to get loans on her own. Instead, she had been using Lawrence's identity. Lawrence had intended to file a lawsuit to give Elaine the debts, but since his sickness was revealed, the court case would take too long. He purposefully decided not to file for divorce, intending to leave Elaine with the debts, knowing that his life would probably end before the court's ruling. Receiving assets is only one aspect of inheritance. Obligations are also included. Lawrence owed $50,000, all of which Elaine had caused. He meant to leave that debt to her. Lawrence created a banking card with just $2,000 for this reason, giving up everything else. The $50,000 debt and the $2,000 in the account made up his estate. Elaine would definitely attempt to get her hands on the bank card after he died. He knew she would take out the money and spend it fast, so he had left it handy. Since Elaine doesn't know much about the law, the account was just bait, and she would probably leave things alone. Meanwhile, they would finish the renunciation of inheritance, guaranteeing Elaine would get the entirety of Lawrence's fortune. Lawrence had given them instructions on this plan several times, and he would see to it that it was carried out. After they finished the renunciation of inheritance, Lawrence's will was carried out in its entirety. All of Lawrence's estate legally belonged to Elaine. In a span of 3 months, nothing happened. For 6 months, pictures of Lawrence and Dad were still on display at the house. One day, while Lydia was praying in front of the photographs of Lawrence and Dad at home, the doorbell rang. Elaine was there on the door. "Is it possible for us to speak?" she said. "I have something to say." She kept pounding loudly on the door even after Lydia ignored her and switched off the doorbell. "Please open," she said. "I'd like to speak." "Open the door now." The thudding became more intense as the hammering increased in volume. Mom opened the door. Elaine pushed her way in. "Hey, you're rich, right?" she yelled. "Give Lawrence his portion of your possessions and inheritance." It seems that she had come to terms with the fact that her inheritance had had a negative balance. A negative inheritance is unheard of. "You depleted Lawrence's savings," Mom said coldly. "Only $2,000 was left." "Lies," she cried out. "Give me this house then. Lawrence should get Dad's estate because he was the oldest son. I should inherit this house because I am his wife. My name is on this house. It's something my husband gave me. You have no right to it." "Because the kids were still in school at the time," Mom said. "Why was the oldest son left with nothing?" "You folks are insane. Give me whatever Lawrence was meant to inherit, please. I've stated it a number of times. Nothing remains. Please go right away." At this point, Mom was begging her to leave, just to get rid of the shouting. "No, I own this house. I refuse to depart," she urged. Elaine then began tossing objects into the foyer. Mom and Lydia dashed outdoors, drawing the attention of a neighbor who must have heard the ruckus. He was urged to contact the police. Before long, a patrol car with sirens screaming pulled up. 2 stout police officers got out. They described the situation to the authorities, and they soon came out with a screaming and yelling Elaine. When she spotted them, her outburst got stronger, but the cops shoved her into the patrol car and took her away. They later found out that Elaine had signed a contract promising not to talk to them after receiving a harsh scolding at the police station. Nearly a year had gone by since Lawrence's death. Lydia liked to imagine that, just like Dad always wanted, he and Lawrence were now sipping drinks together in peace. She couldn't help but smile when she looked up at the brilliant sky and thought about her dad and Lawrence. In the middle of these contemplations, she was facing a new sort of difficulty. Sophie was 25 years old. 6 months ago, she and her 25-year-old spouse, Hugo, had gotten married. While their new house was being built, they were temporarily residing with Hugo's in-laws. Since they first started dating, their relationship had been good, and Hugo's in-laws were fair and friendly. After their marriage, there was no sudden shift in their perspective. Instead, they all got along well, but there was a problem with Hugo's sister, Lydia. Since their initial meeting, Lydia, who was a year younger than Hugo, had not liked Sophie. She used to criticize Sophie's looks and sense of style quite a bit. Even though Lydia and her partner were now living together, things weren't working out, and she regularly went back home. When Lydia was there, she managed Sophie with different tasks and treated her nearly like a servant. Hugo's parents had chastised her, but Lydia hadn't behaved any differently. One day they heard Lydia announce her presence from the entryway while Sophie was enjoying a coffee break. Lydia insisted on something sweet. When Sophie got up to make her coffee, she gave her some cookies, but Lydia turned them down, citing poor quality. She even admitted that she was craving jasmine tea, but she reluctantly took the cookies in their place. Though Sophie was annoyed, she decided to keep her thoughts to herself and refrained from arguing. Hugo's mother, Mia, saw this and started berating Lydia. "What are you saying to Sophie? Seriously, how is she expected to understand your emotions? Sophie is not your servant, she is Hugo's wife. You return here nearly daily. Have you discussed things with Levi?" Lydia covered her ears and acted like a whiny kid, obviously not wanting to listen. When they first started dating, Lydia's boyfriend Livy was truly friendly and pleasant. Early on, they appeared to be on the verge of marriage, since they were so in love that it was almost difficult to witness. But after a few months of cohabitation, significant issues surfaced. Lydia was careless with money, disregarded housework, and her affair was discovered after a while. Levi proposed ending things. He wanted Lydia out of there as quickly as possible because the place was rented in his name. Lydia flatly refused to go and shunned conversations about it. Despite this, though Sophie was surprised by Lydia's actions, she decided not to say anything because she didn't think Lydia would take Levy's feelings into account. "Not just your own," Maya said to Lydia. "You should first offer an apology if you have done anything incorrect." Mia spoke softly, like she was trying to reprimand a child, but Lydia didn't seem to take any of it. Mia was exhausted by the time Lydia departed. "I'll take care of things from here," Sophie informed her kindly. "Take a moment to relax." "Thank you, Sophie," was Maya's tired grin in response. "I believe I will take a little break." It was obvious that Maya was tired from dealing with Lydia, and Sophie wanted to support her. They were enjoying a leisurely breakfast the following day, a holiday, when the doorbell rang. When Sophie went to check, Levi was there at the door. "Levi has arrived," Sophie declared, taking a serious look. "Let him in," her father-in-law remarked. Levi was shown into the living room as Sophie opened the door. Her in-laws gave him a heartfelt bow and an apology. "A long time has passed for everything our daughter has caused you to endure," they said sincerely. "We sincerely apologize. We must be to blame for how we brought her up. Even as an adult, she is incapable of telling good from bad." It broke Sophie's heart to see her in-laws lower their heads in apologies for Lydia's actions. Her spouse also had a worried expression on his face. With a concerned expression, Levi addressed everyone. "Hi everyone, it has been a long while. Kindly lift your heads. I came here today to talk to you about something important. Therefore, it's not your fault. We'll do everything we can to help," he said. "Do not hesitate to ask questions." Mia gave a happy response. "Our goal is to assist. Tell us what you need, please." Then Levi said, "I'm grateful. I apologize, but I need your assistance to persuade Lydia to move out of the flat as soon as possible. I sincerely hate that this has happened, and I trusted her enough to let us live together." Her in-laws, seeing his honest apology, gave him a pitying look. Levi seemed exhausted, maybe from not getting enough sleep, and he was looking drained. Hugo, Sophie's husband, saw this and gave a firm nod, saying, "You don't even need to ask. We'll see to it that Lydia knows she's been a burden." "Yes, Levi, we're very sorry," Maya said. Levi forced a feeble smile, appearing somewhat reassured by their reply. Once Levi departed, Sophie's in-laws talked about what to do with Lydia. They made the decision to give her a call and attempt to get her to go. They said they would be upstairs if necessary. When Lydia finally came about half an hour later, they could hear more and more voices coming from the living room. Every now and again, they would hear something shattering, Maya screaming and Lydia yelling angrily. Sophie's spouse and she exchanged anxious glances, uncertain about when to step in. Then Mia's voice could be heard pleading. "Hugo, Sophie, would you please come down here?" They hurried downstairs to see an irate Lydia, a stern-looking Hugo, and an obviously tired Mia. The sideboard's glass doors were broken and the TV remote and Lydia's purse were strewn all over the floor. Despite the turmoil that astounded Sophie, her husband asked Mia calmly, "Mom, are you okay?" Weary but beaming, Maya said, "Yes, I apologize for worrying you, Hugo and Sophie. We want you to know that Lydia is not welcome in our home until she truly changes and reflects on her actions." Sophie continued, "Please don't allow her in if she attempts to enter while we're away." Sophie's spouse gave her a nod of approval. "We've decided not to tolerate Lydia's behavior any longer," Maya went on. "Despite having a fantastic guy, she decides to be egotistical and cheat. It's not appropriate. She will have to work and repay the money she has lost. Sophie, please lend a hand here. Sophie nodded, saying, understood. Lydia stood and stared at Sophie, evidently annoyed, saying, I'm done with this place, I will never return, don't come sobbing to me later. You'll regret disregarding your own daughter. After saying her last words, she rushed out of the living room. Sophie ran after her to give her luggage back, since she saw she had left it behind. Mom and Dad said what they said, but if you try to stop me from entering this house just because you're the wife, you'll regret it, Lydia said. Lydia snatched it from Sophie angrily. After a moment of hesitation, Sophie moved away, causing Mia to come closer to her with worry. Hey, you didn't say anything rude to Sophie, did you? Maya inquired with a nonchalant reply. Lydia said, I didn't say anything. She then shut the door and walked out. Hugo and Sophie were back in the living room talking about Lydia. Were you able to persuade her now? What is she going to do? Inquired Sophie's spouse, Hugo, appearing exhausted. She has decided to vacate Livy's place for the time being, he said. She will probably start paying back the money she has spent by renting a residence of her own. After 3 months their lives, which Lydia had appended, were starting to return to normal. After their conversations, Levi phoned to thank them and let them know that Lydia had moved out. Even yet, they were in the dark about Lydia's whereabouts and activities, as they had not received any word from her. Though Sophie was a little worried about her, she was also largely relieved. Then one day, out of the blue, Lydia came back. Mia was shopping with a friend, while Sophie and Sophie's husband were at work. Sophie looked at the monitor and saw Lydia standing there as the doorbell rang. She let herself in and opened the door before Sophie could say anything. The location appears entirely different now that I'm not there, she said. Has the majority of the furnishings been disposed of or something? I see you're here. How could you have ignored my doorbell ringing? My brother and Dad, are they at work? Mom, where are you? She began shouting. Lydia burst in with a ton of stuff, including a duffel bag and a huge suitcase. Sophie replied that Maya had gone shopping with a friend, feeling terrible. Please wash these by tomorrow, Lydia added nonchalantly as she opened her duffel bag and dropped a mountain of laundry at Sophie's feet. If you don't get this done soon, I'll run out of clothes. Sophie was stunned as she looked at her. Lydia, who was obviously furious, went on her rant. What are you saying? What, you talk back? How dare you? You're only a spouse. I am this house's daughter. Sophie attempted to stop her, but she would not stop yelling. Oh, and I'm dehydrated, Lydia said. I'll be clear about what I want, since leaving things up to you never ends well. I'm craving a cafe au lait and a scone loaded with chocolate chips right now. Go get some. If we don't already have some at home, I'll give it 5 minutes or so. Did you tell the in-laws that you'd be coming back today? Sophie felt the need to explain, as if the recent encounter hadn't occurred. With a casual response, Lydia said, No, I didn't. They could have changed the locks if I had alerted them ahead of time. However, I know my brother, Mom, and Dad will be happy to see me again. I mean, I am this house's cherished daughter after all. Startled by her too positive outlook, Sophie firmly said, Then please go, since they haven't forgiven you. I can't defy their desires, Lydia yelled back, irritated. Why should I listen to you? You're only a spouse. I'm this house's priceless daughter. Isn't a wife like a housekeeper? All you have to do is obey me in silence. Now go to work. Sophie calmly turned to face the enraged Lydia and declared, I don't live in this house. Lydia made an odd squeak in return, expressing her complete astonishment. Lydia was stunned as she stood there, as Maya's happy voice emerged from the doorway. Hello to all of you. Sophie's spouse and Hugo arrived home after Mia, and the house was instantly bustling. Sophie's spouse and the in-laws seemed astonished to see Lydia there. There was a little pause before Hugo spoke out firmly. Why are you here, Lydia? Hugo remarked sharply. We warned you that you're not welcome until you've really thought about and regretted your acts. His harshness surprised Lydia, but she soon reverted to her customary behavior. I've returned because I've thought back on what I did, she begged. I'm the daughter of this home, so please pardon me. Hugo's face did not waver despite her entreaties. Her father-in-law and Maya agreed with him and refrained from defending her. With a sly smile, Lydia turned to face Sophie. Sophie just mentioned that she doesn't reside here, by the way. What action did this woman take to lose her house? It has to be something very bad. Sophie's spouse was perplexed by Lydia's remarks and said, we haven't taken any action. Confused, Lydia inquired, what do you mean? My sibling was also expelled. I have no idea what's going on. We weren't expelled, Sophie said coolly. We chose to relocate since Hugo received a work transfer and our new house was ready. That was the plan all along, but the official orders just came through recently. The new location is a pleasant town with fresh air and delectable cuisine, even if it is in the country, she added. Not only are we moving, but Dad and Mom are also moving, the in-laws said with obvious excitement. That's correct. From now on, we are going to enjoy a relaxed lifestyle in Hawaii. We've been planning this relocation for years and happily, we were able to find a buyer for this property right away. Lydia started to act irritated and fussy. Are you really going to sell the house? Hold on. Is that the reason why there isn't much furniture left? I had no prior knowledge of this. I intended to move here when I returned. How am I meant to proceed? Stop being so selfish, Maya reprimanded her. As an adult, accept accountability for your own deeds. Lydia started crying and kept looking at them. We heard from Levi about your affair with a married man, furious Hugo stated. In addition to having to reimburse Levi, you're in hot water because his wife is chasing money from you. You are solely responsible for it. Lydia attempted angrily to hurl some of the remaining furniture at Sophie's husband and her. After realizing that Hugo would not pardon her, she said, I detest every single one of you. Damn it. Lydia nearly acted out again, but Sophie and Sophie's husband were able to stop her. Mia made the police call without thinking twice. Lydia sobbed and acted out until the police showed up. Lydia was then observed sleeping in parks and internet cafes and working throughout the day to make ends meet, as she had had nowhere else to go. She appeared considerably older and more unkempt than the polished, contemporary young woman she had formerly been. Sophie's spouse and she were content in their new house and had a smooth transition. Now that they were in Hawaii, the in-laws appeared to be leading a cozy and relaxed existence. They kept in good contact with them through their frequent video conversations, just as they did when they shared a residence. The whole family was on a video conference with the in-laws today because it was a holiday. The in-laws played with their infant on the television, appearing tanned and grinning. Their baby, still very small, looked on indifferently. Their youngster suddenly grinned brilliantly, and their in-laws joyfully applauded. Sophie considered these uncomplicated daily experiences to be immensely valuable. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Please leave a comment below. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe for more awesome stories like this. Stay blessed and healthy. Thank you for watching and see you in the next story. Bye.